Today's video is about a real-life scam victim who I will refer to only as H. H is 27 years old and it all started with the search for employment. Our purpose today is not to mock or scorn this individual, but rather to look at the particular details of the scam to see what we can learn from it. To set the scene, H had been through quite a few troubles in life, including a divorce, health problems including COVID and kidney stones, and then what H describes as an illegal termination from work after taking medical leave. And the ensuing dispute over the termination resulted in months of delay in receiving unemployment payments. Of course, stories like this are sadly too common in the world in which we find ourselves, and my reason for mentioning this background will become clear later. But anyway, H did what I think is probably the right thing to do in such a situation, which is to try to get back on your feet. H started looking for employment and applied for this job, Remote Data Entry Specialist, that was posted on Indeed.com, which is a reputable job site. After filling in the application, there were some online assessments on the Indeed website, and then about a day later, H got a response from the supposed employer. The job posting had said they were trying to fill 10 positions in this role, so such a quick response didn't seem out of place. Things progressed quite quickly with the exchange of messages and phone calls, which all seemed to go very well, then an online interview. So, an online interview for a work-at-home role. Well, 2 or 3 years ago, all of that might have seemed really unusual, and maybe would have rung alarm bells, but now, in 2021, it's not really unusual at all. I actually know other people who've been working in their roles for months and have not yet met any of their colleagues in person. This is just a thing that happens now. Anyway, the interview all seemed to proceed in a very encouraging way, and H was feeling quite optimistic about all of this. After a very brief moment of consideration of H's interview responses, they offered H the job. They said there would be some work materials required for the role, a computer and some software licenses and so on, and H was to organise the procurement of these items. H asked if this was to be reimbursed afterwards. No, they said they would pay up front. They would send a cheque via courier. H was to present the cheque, then contact the company's authorised vendor channel for procurement of the work materials. The supposed employer did indeed send the cheque and it arrived the next day, just as they said, and here it is. H paid this cheque in via mobile banking on a Friday and made contact with the company's authorised vendor to begin the procurement. The vendor appeared to be having some technical problems receiving payments via conventional methods and suggested payment via Apple iTunes cards. After all, the computer being procured was supposedly an Apple MacBook Pro, so that sort of made sense. The approved vendor pushed for prompt action, stating that a time-limited price deal had been struck with the employer. H finished dealing with all of the payment requests on Wednesday. Thursday morning, the cheque from the supposed employer bounced. The scammers broke contact. H was now significantly in the red. So, to address the pachyderm in the parlour, yes, this is a blatant scam. The rubber cheque is quite a common scam, especially common in the context of fake employment scams. You might be thinking this is so obvious you would have recognised it straight away. And fair enough, yeah, me too. I would have recognised it because I've seen it before. I'm aware of it. It's obvious to me not because it's fundamentally obvious in some platonic form, but because I've seen it before. H was not aware of it, and so it was not so obvious. I asked H about how this came to be. Was there not some life skills or humanities education somewhere at school or college to make H a little bit ready to resist this? But apparently no. This isn't a thing that's taught at school. I mean, I received no such teaching at school either, but for me that was quite a long time ago and we had other things to worry about, like saber-toothed cats. So H's particular journey through life had never brought about exposure to the knowledge of this specific scam. But wait, shouldn't it have been obvious just from the behaviour of the scammers, the slightly unusual nature of the job appointment, the requirement to buy your own kit, the urgency and the weirdness of the payment with the supposed vendor? Well, yes, those things should ring alarm bells. They really should. But here's the thing. When your head is already clanging with other alarm bells about where the next rent payment will come from, whether your previous employer will pay up the money they owe, whether your own health and well-being will crumble and fail, I happen to think it's sort of understandable that your faculties of reason, caution and so-called common sense might not be operating at full capacity. Add to that the excitement of actually getting a job offer in the midst of a desperate search, and there's another way that critical thinking can sometimes go on the back burner. I recall myself from past experience being especially accommodating with the requests from people who just offered me a job. It's kind of what you do. Etiquette kind of requires it. I'm mentioning all of this not to make excuses for H, there's no reason to do that, but rather so we can strip away the judgy and unproductive nonsense about how smart we are for knowing this was a scam, so we can learn from it, even if that learning is a reinforcement of something we already know. H fell for the scam because of simple ignorance that this scam exists, or maybe innocence is a kinder way to phrase that, and also because of great desperation in the midst of very challenging life circumstances. I asked H to write some advice for the kind of past version of H, that is the about-to-be-scammed version of H, and unsurprisingly the answer can be summed up as, don't overextend trust, and in financial transactions don't value expediency above security. So specifically, just because some stranger has supposedly offered you a job, you shouldn't accept them as trustworthy until and unless they have abundantly earned that trust. And on the finances, specifically, if the cheque had been paid in at the physical counter at the bank, it might have been rejected right there and then, and all of this would have been cut short. This is just an example, but I think it's a pertinent reminder to think about whether there's anything that we're habitually doing in our financial and online lives that places too high a value on convenience at the expense of security. Okay, in conclusion, what do we do now? Well, there are a few things. Firstly, some of you may feel empathy toward H and want to help directly. This is in no way an appeal, but if you do wish to contribute financially to H's recovery from this misfortune, there's a GoFundMe link in the video description. I'm not begging you for this, and neither is H, but from experience I know that if we didn't set this up, people would request it. So it's there, entirely at your option if you want it. Nextly, if you can't or don't want to do that, fair enough, there's still a way you can help for free. And that's to just stop for a moment and think about the people around you. Are you sure they're aware of and ready to resist the kind of scams that are waiting out there for them? Talk to your friends and family about scams, about how different scams work and the serious impact they have on their victims. Heck, even if you decide just to chat with your friends about scam victim stupidity, you'll still be raising the subject for discussion, and the more people talk about this, the less it will happen. Finally, if you're searching for employment yourself, please be wary of this common rubber check scam. In general, an employer will not tell you to procure your own office equipment, and in rare cases where they do need you to buy kit, they will never include your own finances in the loop. They would just pay the vendor directly on account or on receipt of invoice. If they can't do that, they're not a company you want to work for. In all contexts, beware of anyone who wants to send you a large sum of money via one payment method, especially paper checks, and requires you to pay out money via a different payment method. The reciprocal part is not quite as obvious, but why would a complete stranger who's just met you and only online trust you with thousands of dollars of their money paid in advance? Always ask yourself why anyone would even need you to be in the middle of their transaction. The answer is most often because it's a scam, and even if it wasn't an outright scam, it would be money laundering. Don't go there. So I hope this was interesting. Please stay safe, and I hope to see you again soon.